Hi everybody, I'm putting together my Ancient Egypt unit study and I thought I would take you along on the process. So right now I'm showing you all the yummy supplies that we've already gotten. Now this video is going to be pretty lengthy, so if you'd rather read than watch, you can go over to my website at Pepper and Pine under the blog post entry, How to Put Together a Unit Study, Ancient Egypt. And you can find all of the books and kits and projects that we used with the names of the books, the authors, and you can also find all of my lesson plans for this 7-week unit. So the first thing I do when putting together a unit is I go over to rainbowresource.com and I put in the unit that we're going to be studying, and I use it as a way to find out what kind of books and materials are out there. I really like their search engine, I really like their supplies and their products, and I usually buy most of my supplements from rainbowresource.com. Okay, so once all of my supplies come in, I have to sort through them and figure out which books I'm going to read aloud to my kids, which books they are going to read to themselves, what kits and projects we're going to do, and when we're going to do them. And so right now I'm going through all of my books, and I'm using the full back sticky post-it notes to put my notes on all of these books. Now I highly recommend that product. It's so much better than the regular post-its. So I write all, like, how many pages are in the book, or how many pages we're going to do per day, or how many chapters are in the book, so that I can figure out how long it's going to take to get through each of those books and how many pages we have to read every day. So I put them in different categories here. I had some biographies, things about the culture, things about pyramids, and things about mummies. That way I could kind of figure out where I wanted to put each of those books within our lesson plan. So right now I am just trying to figure out which books are going to carry through for the whole entire 6 or 7 weeks of this unit. And then I can use those as kind of my anchor for the entire unit. And then there are other books that I'm going to read aloud to my kids. There are going to be books that my kids are going to read aloud to themselves and write narrations about. So this took a little bit of time, but once it was done, the rest of the process went about a lot easier. So let's take a listen. Okay, so I'm going to take you through our lesson plan week to week. Now, I've gone ahead and I've filled out my lesson plan for week 17. So this will be from Monday, January 25th through the 29th. And this is going to be our first week for our Ancient Egypt unit. And I went ahead and did a 7-week lesson plan, 6 weeks of full lessons, and the 7th week will be, of course, our daily work, but our for our Egypt unit, it's very small, and I left that week available so that if we don't get done with all of this work, this is only week 1, then we can have that extra buffer week before we move on to our next unit. So I want to go through what I did here. So these are my lesson plans. I add my spelling list to my lesson plan. I leave some blank space here for just, notations or field trips or whatever else I need to do. There's a lot of daily work that my kids do every day. It doesn't usually need a lot of my assistance. And now here, the read aloud part, this is going to be all things related to our Ancient Egypt unit. And these are all books that I'm reading aloud to my kids. So the first book that I have for this week is this book, which is going to be a really interesting for my kids to look through even when I'm done reading it. And I scheduled a week for this book. It's a lot easier for me to think in terms of weeks. So even though we might end up reading this all in one day, I've got it there for that whole week. Then I've got You Wouldn't Want to Be an Egyptian Mummy. And again, this is something my kids could probably read on their own, but I'm going to read this book aloud to them. But then after that, they're welcome to read this as many times as they want. It's one of those fun books that just lends itself well to being read over and over again. So I've got that scheduled again for a whole week, but we might sit down like on a Tuesday or Wednesday and decide to read the whole thing. And then the last book that I have is definitely a book that I would read aloud to them. Actually, not the last book, but anyway, another book that I have is Tales of Ancient Egypt. And this is, junior high or high school level book. But because this unit is for my 4th grader and my 8th grader. My 4th grader definitely wouldn't be reading something like this and enjoying it or getting a lot out of it on his own. And so this is definitely a book that I will be reading to both of my kids. So in my history units, I try to have a book on religion or mythology. And for ancient Egypt, this will be our mythology book. But I also want a book on history, and this will be our history book. So this is going to go through all the pharaohs. And again, this is junior high or high school level, in my opinion. Maybe, 5th or 6th grade if you've got like an advanced reader. But for my 4th grader, he wouldn't be reading this. So again, this is something that's of value for me to read aloud. Whereas these books, of course, my kids could read aloud to themselves, but it's something that I'm going to be doing with them. Okay, so on the flip side, I have my kids' mental math. This is something that we do aloud together. I'll read the questions, and then my 8th grader does the math computations on his own without writing them down, then gives me the answer. And same with my 4th grader. We have a lot of daily math. This geometry is fairly new learning for my 8th grader. I always inherit just old math books, and I add that to his daily math as a review. So this is teaching textbooks level 7, which also has some new stuff scattered in there that we haven't covered before. But just 1 page a day. It takes maybe 5-10 minutes at the very most, and it just keeps some of those skills fluid throughout the year. And then number chains, and I will show you this book in a later video. I really like it a lot, and it's similar to our mental math, where there's about 4 or 5 computations that the person has to do in their head until you get to the final answer, which I like a lot. For my 4th grader, we're working through key to measurement level 3 right now. He's just about to start it, and 10-minute math, which is just a variety of math workbooks again that I've inherited, and it's just 10 minutes a day, just a minimum of 10 minutes, which could be 1 worksheet or less, depending on how many questions are on the worksheet. And again, that just keeps those skills fluid. Okay, so down to our main lesson block over here. So we've got ancient Egypt. This is week 1 right here. And I've got some things here that are going to be carrying over week to week. So we've got our history book, which I just showed you. So this one wasn't divided up into easy chapters that I could just do 1 chapter a day. I think it only has maybe about 8 chapters, but some of them get really long. And so I divided this up over 4 weeks, and I just divided up the pages so that I could do roughly about 10 pages a day over these 4 weeks. And I know that I've talked about, using sticky Post-its on books to just kind of help with the lesson planning, but all of the books that I'm using for this unit, I've put how many chapters a day, how many weeks it's supposed to take. That way I can figure out how many weeks this book is going to take and what's going to come after it. So this is going to be our history. Then I've got some independent reading for my kids. Now I got so many books for ancient Egypt. So some of the books that are super easy to read, I've left this for my kids to read on their own. And they don't necessarily have to write narrations about it, but that might be something that I include, or maybe an oral narration. But usually the narration here is for the heavier reading. It's not so much for that easy reading. And then we have our activity, which I've got 2 of all the activities. And so for this week, we're going to do amazing mummies. And I will also have a video on how this works out and the results of that. And so that's going to be coming up. And then this DK book, I've done this book for, or rather, I've scheduled 2 pages for every day of this unit. And so this is quite a lengthy book, and so this will last 7 weeks if we do 2 pages a day. And so I've got that down here at the bottom. And so as I go week to week, you're going to see this book again, and you're going to see this book and this book again, because I'm not going to be able to complete those in 1 week. But these books here, these 3 books here, we will be able to complete in the week. And then I have this mummy mazes. When I buy books for the kids, I make sure that I include some things that are also just plain old fun, even though it's, loosely related to, ancient Egypt. It's just a fun thing to keep them busy when I'm reading aloud, or to keep the younger students busy. And so I've just included that you know, as a Friday activity. And this project might take one day, it might take more than one day, I'm not sure. So I scheduled 3 days of doing that, and then for Wednesday we have an Egyptian meal, which I'm not sure yet what we're gonna do. Let's, you know, wrap our heads around that quickly. Okay, so let me take you on to week 2 of our Ancient Egypt unit. Okay, so this is week 2 of Ancient Egypt. And again, I'm not gonna go over these books every time, but again, we're gonna have these 2 books for 4 weeks and this book for 7 weeks. But the new books that I have for this week are the 5,000-year-old puzzle. So again, just for ease, I've scheduled this book for the whole week, and I've just broken it up for like maybe 5 or 6 pages a day. But for a book like this, chances are we'll probably like read this on Monday and maybe read this on Tuesday. But again, for the ease of my lesson plan, I've just spread it over the whole week. So we have this book as well, You Wouldn't Want to Be a Pyramid Builder. And then we have, on the flip side, for the kids' independent reading, we have this book. And this is going to take, I just split this up over 2 weeks so that it wouldn't be too much reading in any one day. And then again, I have another maze book. And this is going to go through the whole entire 7-week unit. But I'm just showing you it right now. And then for our activity, we have ancient coins and Egyptian mummy. And I have 2 of these and 2 of these because again, I've got my 4th grader and my 8th grader doing this unit. Okay, so let me take you to week 3. Okay. So this is week 3, and I had to pull this book out because this was for 2 weeks. And I've got 2 projects for this week. Again, we have our mythology and our history and our eyewitness book for ancient Egypt. And then we have this book over here, Egyptology. I love books like this. I love the interactive quality of them. My kids really enjoy going through books like this. It's like discovering something new every time. And so I scheduled this for a week to read through. Personally, I find these kind of books really hard to read through because there's so many little captions and little pictures off to the side that it's really hard just to read it through. This is something that's a lot easier just to kind of glance at, look at the pictures, maybe read a caption here and there, but we're going to attempt to do that. This is going to be a really fun book for them to go through. You Wouldn't Want to Be Cleopatra. So in my history units, I make sure that I have something on religion or mythology, something on the actual history, a lot of books on culture and just the lifestyle, and then of course, if I can get it, a book on a biography or a historical fiction. And I did not find any historical fictions for ancient Egypt, but if you guys know of any, please leave them in the comment section below. But I do have this book on Cleopatra, so we're going to read that one aloud. And then my kids are going to read this book. Sorry for the delay. I confused even myself. All right, so the kids are going to read this book. They're going to finish reading this book. And then for our activities, we have, and I've got 2 of these. This is a papyrus making kit. Now, I have a total of 4 kits, 2 for this one and 2 that are this different brand. And I originally thought that we could do them both in that week, but then I decided to split it up. That way, it's not like, you know, they're not bored of it. So this is in week 3. I have it again in week 6, but it's just that different one. And this one, I think you can also paint on the papyrus. I'm not sure though. I'll have to look at the instructions. And then we also have painting on this tile. And this looks like a really fun project to do too. So it comes with all the materials that you need, and here's the tile. And those are our 2 activities. I don't know how that's going to work out. Honestly, until we actually get going into one of the units, it's hard to tell how long everything's going to take. And that's why I've scheduled in that last week. for just in case we don't get through everything. And it's okay if we don't get through everything. There's a lot of repetition in this unit. So let me put this aside and get week 4. Okay, so here's week 4. And at week 4, we end up finishing both of these books. Okay, so this will be the last week for this one. And then we also have Food in Ancient Egypt. Now, when I picked this book up, I thought it was different recipes, but it's actually a book specifically on the diet and the food and food preparation in ancient Egypt. So I was actually happily surprised about that. But now when it comes to making our Egyptian meals, I'm going to have fewer, I guess, recipes than I had originally thought. But that's fine. Actually, this is better. So that's for this week. And then I have... This book has a lot of different ancient civilizations. Oops, sorry, that's my kids read aloud. Here we go. This is for ancient Egyptians. This is a book that I'm going to read aloud to the kids. And again, this is really repetitive. We've already gone over this in some of the other books, but it's such an easy read. I find that this is like a good way to kind of test my kids. Like as I'm reading it, I could ask them questions, especially since I have read aloud the other books. I know what they've heard, and that way I can kind of ask them about it in just kind of a casual discussion way. Okay, so next we have their independent reading is going to be from this book. So this book actually has a variety of ancient civilizations, but the first approximately 10 chapters is on the ancient Egyptians. And so I'm going to have my kids read aloud to themselves or read silently to themselves one chapter a day for 2 weeks. And these chapters are really short, just a few pages long. And a lot of the chapters actually come with some kind of an activity. Now, since I've already purchased all of our activities as kits, I'm probably not going to use any of these. But if you just were going to purchase one book, then this is a good choice because it comes with activities as well. And then we are going to do this excavation kit, and this is for excavating, I guess, a sarcophagus maybe. And I've got 2 of these, of course. All right, so let's move on to week 5. Okay, so here we are with week 5. Now, in week 5, things get changed up a bit because we no longer have our mythology or our actual history. And so what I have in that spot instead is another biography. This is King Tut. And this is a super easy read. They're very good books. We read the Who is Marco Polo book and we liked it a lot. It's just enough information. It's not like a lot of excess information. They're really well written. I've really enjoyed these books, so I'm really excited about reading this one. Now I've just we're on week 5. Now I had 2 choices to make. This has 12 chapters plus like an introduction. Now I usually read 1 chapter a day. I could make this for 2 weeks and on, a couple of those days read 2 chapters, or I could spread it out for 3 weeks and have a couple of days where I'm not actually reading anything. And I decided to make it for 3 weeks, which means that it's going to be week 5, week 6, and week 7. Now week 7 is my overflow week. And so it's fine to have just a little bit of reading. In fact, I think these are going to be possibly the only 2 books that I have, and it gives us time to catch up on other reading if we didn't have time. Or I could choose to squeeze this into 2 weeks and then leave that final week completely open. So as we progress through the unit, I will have to make that decision. Okay, so now we're on to the other things that we're doing, and I'm just looking at the time. This is going to take forever. Okay, so fun with hieroglyphics. This ended up being a kit with a book. It's fantastic. And so when I'm figuring out how many chapters or how long a book is going to take, I check out the chapters or how many pages there are, and then I just break it down from there. And so I chose 5 pages a day running over 2 weeks for this book. And then of course we can do the activities that go along with it because it comes with that stamp kit. And here's something else that can go along with it as well that we can read. And then I have Science in Ancient Egypt, and I love books that bring in other subjects for a unit, so I'm really excited about this book, and I've scheduled this for 2 weeks. It has 6 chapters, and so I'm just saying, you know, basically Monday, Wednesday, Friday we'll read a chapter, and that will span over the 2 weeks. But for the sake of my lesson plan, I just put chapter 1 for Monday and chapter 1 for Tuesday, and so on. And then we have King Tut, and then we have a new book, DK Pyramid book. Now, if I was reading 2 pages a day, this would take 5 weeks. But now that I've got less going on these last couple weeks, I am squeezing this down into 2 or 3 weeks by reading 4 pages a day. Oops, that is right here. And then my kids will continue with their independent reading in the book that I showed you for week 4. And then for their activity for this week, they're going to do this one, archaeology pyramid dig, and I've got 2 of those for each of my kids. And then of course I've got my eyewitness book, again 2 pages a day. So week 6, we have the other papyrus kit. We have paint your own papyrus, and we have a couple of worksheets here that are going to be part of my kids' independent work. And we will continue with fun with hieroglyphics and who was King Tut and science in ancient Egypt. Now, in doing this, I realized that there were 2 books that I had scheduled, and for some reason didn't get them actually into the lesson plan. And so that's Dinosaur Mummies and The Time of the Pharaohs. And so luckily I've got week 7 here, which only has this book. Let me move this aside so it's not confusing. I have week 7 here that I can now add. This book is like my kids can read this aloud to themselves, and this book that I can read to them. But since I only have the 1 week left and I have scheduled this for 2 weeks, I'm just going to read more pages a day since there really isn't anything else. If you see, I've left this all blank, and I can just go ahead and add that in. Okay, so if you want to see these projects coming up, stay tuned, because of course I will have all the projects that we're doing as separate videos so that you can see whether there are things that you want to add to your ancient Egypt unit. Okay, thanks for watching.